Ah, welcome to the preview for the 2020 Houston Texans. Prediction for the record. Last season the Texans went 10-6, and honestly, this is the weirdest team that I've gotten to talk about so far, just because they're so. They really didn't have much change, and I don't feel like there's a lot of terribly noteworthy stuff. I'm just realizing now, after saying that in my injury portion of this, I don't mention J.J. Watt, but obviously J.J. Watt was significantly reduced last season due to injury. So last season, Texans went 10-6. Having one of the best QBs in the league will always make your team competitive, and that is exactly what Deshaun Watson does. It's crazy to think about now. We got Lamar Jackson, we got Patrick Mahomes in the league. You look at both those guys, and amazed with them in different aspects. But you can take a little of each of their game and sort of put it into almost a combo of those two, created Deshaun Watson. And it's just, Mahomes is so good with what he can do, and Lamar is so good with what he can do. But you get that combo in Deshaun Watson. He's easily a top 10 quarterback in this league, and probably even better than that. Probably top 5 at this point, to be completely honest. And they're just having him will always give them a chance to win. So, the next thing I took note of is this offense really gets vertical with their speed at the receiver position. And when I noticed that, I started to wonder if the reason DeAndre Hopkins was sort of left as Bill O'Brien went, we don't really need you as much as you think, is because maybe they're trying to get more of a speed or a speed game going, or agile players with decent that doesn't really make any sense though either. DeAndre Hopkins is a heck of a player. I was gonna say route running because Randall Cobb is a good route runner, but there's no way that DeAndre Hopkins is getting less open than Randall Cobb. It's a very strange trade, but if they want to get the speed, maybe you could say Randall Cobb's a little faster, and Brandon Cooks, I would definitely say, is probably faster than DeAndre Hopkins. So I think what they're going for here is they want to be fast. They want to be a really fast offense. They want anybody who gets the ball in their hands to be able to take off quickly. They also forced it on defense. They forced a ton of fumbles. When they got after the quarterback, the coaches must be preaching the strip sack. So when I thought about that, I just wanted to check who the D coordinator was, and it's not Romeo Crennel anymore. Romeo Crennel is the assistant head coach as far as I could tell, but he is not the defensive coordinator. And I just thought it was funny to learn that Romeo Crennel is 73, because I would have guessed he was like 55, maybe 60. I can't believe he's 73 years old. Tight end position was kind of strange last season. They got some flashy plays from Darren Fells and Jordan Akins. The other thing I have about that is Akins ended the season with more yards than Fells, but Fells had 7 touchdowns and Akins had 2. I feel like a lot of teams, like, unless they've got a really set guy like Zach Ertz, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, one of those guys. I feel like this happens with a lot of teams. The tight end room is just kind of all over the place, but you got to try to find a good tight end, because that'll help you out, especially if you can get a guy who's all around good at everything. That's really what you're looking for, and it seems like it's kind of hard to find nowadays, because I've only can name 3 guys that are at the top, and then from there it's I'd say I'm probably missing some guys. There's guys like Jared Cook, but he's not as high up there as others. But it's just after those 3, it seems like it's a pretty significant drop off, and I'm sorry if I'm forgetting anybody. But yeah. Oh, Kiki Kuti. There was an option play where they scored a touchdown, and Deshaun Watson pitches the ball back to Kiki Kuti. on a shovel backwards. So if he doesn't catch it, it's going to be a fumble. And Kiki Cootie just snags it behind him with one hand and then runs into the end zone for a touchdown. So that was a really cool play that I didn't get to see until I was checking out the team for this video. Duke Johnson is so much more of a balanced running back than I think of him as. Obviously, I think for a while now people have known he's got some of the best hands at the running back position in the league. He can still cut on a dime. And I saw in a clip against the Jaguars, he could run people over too, which is just really cool to see. Actually, let me check something quick. So I just checked, and I see that I use websites to try to make sure I don't forget any of the transactions that the teams had, and I highlight the important ones. But for some reason, I knew Carlos Hyde wasn't on the team anymore, but I just had to check to make sure because the website I used to track the transactions didn't show that he was not on the team anymore. So that's kind of a big loss for them, and another reason I point out Duke Johnson even more. Will Fuller is such a good deep route runner. He did just the way, I don't know why, but when he goes deep, whether it's a post route, a deep crossing route, anything where he's getting down the field, he's able to outrun his defenders and break free, and that's a hugely important role to play in some offense, especially with this offense, which I think is going to look to get very vertical next season. It's pretty sad as a Bills fan to see that Tywan Jones literally makes one good play all season, and it's basically the game-winning play against the Bills. That was kind of annoying. Nothing with this team surprised me when I was watching them their highlights from last season, though. They're just nothing. I don't know why nothing stood out like this player that I didn't know about. Like, it seems like every team I've done so far has had a guy that's been like, yeah, I didn't know about him. This team was pretty much what I expected. Some stats from the season that I haven't mentioned so far. Whitney Merciless had 4 forced fumbles. Tashawn Gibson had 3 interceptions. Justin Reed, 2 interceptions, 7.5 sacks. For Merciless, leads the team. All these stats have led the team so far, except for Reed because Gibson did. And then for tackles, 142 tackles for Zach Cunningham and 101 for Bernard McKinney. That's exactly what you want to see from your inside linebackers. That is just in the stat column. That's exactly what you want to see. That means the right guys are making the tackles. Nobody's getting too far into the secondary or anything like that. I guess if your D tackle was racking up a lot of tackles, though, you wouldn't be too upset because they can't be too far down the field. And then 9 TFLs for Whitney Merciless as well. He led the team in that stat as well. So, next season I expect them to run I'm expecting them to at least try to run David Johnson into the ground. And when David Johnson isn't getting ran into the ground, I'd expect either 2 things. If David Johnson's still on the field, some very strong play action game where they can get vertical, or another option is if he gets off the field, just line up in the gun with Duke Johnson on the field. Get as many of those receiving weapons as they have. Because even though they're losing Hopkins, they've got a lot of either middle of the road to upper tier receivers on their team. So get a lot of those guys on the field, and then you can. I fully expect them to get everything this season going vertically with how much speed they have on the field. And I've probably mentioned that too much so far. I'm sorry. But also then with that, you'll have Duke Johnson as the check down option, and with Deshaun Watson as your quarterback, even if you can't get the ball down the field to any of those guys, and Duke Johnson as your check down isn't available, you still have the option to take off with your legs. And that's huge. When you talk about, if you get all these guys going down the field and you get all the guys in the secondary and the linebackers to get really deep into their drops, that leaves huge lanes in, even if it's zone coverage, that's going to leave plenty of room for Deshaun Watson to get up the field and gain big yardage. Injuries last season, pretty much injury-free aside from Lamar Miller basically missing. I think he missed the entire year. I don't remember seeing him in any games. I don't think, because I watched the Week 1 game against the Saints, and I don't think he played at all. So, he was out the whole year, and then J.J. Watt, obviously, like I mentioned earlier. For guys they lost in the offseason, they lost their interception leader to Sean Gibson with 3 interceptions. I don't know if I'm going to say that's not a huge deal because they got Eric Murray from the Browns, I'm pretty sure. And DeAndre Hopkins, big loss in talent, but Bill O'Brien doesn't want him, and if they're trying to change the scheme up, it may actually, even though it's like A++ talent there, maybe it helps the team in full. Don't know. And then Jonathan Joseph, he went to Tennessee, I just found out. He's pretty up there in age, though, so see how that goes for him. Lamar Miller left, but he barely played last season, and DJ Reader signed with the Cincinnati Bengals. So, yeah, that's basically all their losses. Now, I was hearing how talented DJ Reader was, and honestly thinking that he must have had big stats last season, but I guess he had more of an impact on the game without any huge numbers, because even he didn't even lead the team in tackles for loss, which I would expect for a guy that was talked up so much. But yeah, or at least have like some solid numbers in that department. Didn't really even notice them. It just must be like, maybe he's like so dominant that he's just getting double teamed every play, and if you're getting double teamed every play, obviously that's a big thing. Gaines, David Johnson, Eric Murray, Randall Cobb, Brandon Cooks. Those 2 receivers. Now we've got Kenny Stills, Will Fuller, Randall Cobb, Brandon Cooks, all on the field at the same time in a 4-receiver set. I mean, those are all pretty talented guys to have on the field at once. I think that's a very dangerous type of offense to have. You got so many weapons everywhere. I think really with that, it's almost like you're never forced to look at one guy. All those guys are talented enough that you think they can make a play, but you're never like any of those guys is like, I have to go to him on this play. He's the number 1 option. And maybe that's another reason Bill O'Brien moved on from DeAndre Hopkins, is because he just didn't like the idea of having to force the ball to one of the players at some points in the game. If he didn't like that, then it was like, okay, we can call a play, you can get through your reads, and we can find the best option for this play because we've got plenty of talent. Now let's talk about the draft. First pick was a guy by the name of Ross Blacklock, who played like some interior defensive line at his school, and very balanced D lineman. I really like this pick because it fills obvious need with DJ Reader leaving. I don't know though, he seemed kind of small, almost like an Aaron Donald build. Don't want to compare him to Aaron Donald, but like an Aaron Donald build, because he's not as big as the normal defensive tackle we see, and we'll see where they put him. I think they're a 3-4 in Houston, I think, so maybe you're looking at more of a defensive end guy here when he gets down into their system, and I think it just makes sense. It's a place they needed to fill, and he was a very well-rounded player. He was doing everything, at least at a standard that I was happy with. I mean, he had a variety of options in his game, and that was good to see. Next up was Jonathan Greenard. I think it's Greenard. It's spelled Greenard, but I think Greenard sounds right to me. He gives off vibes just like Von Miller. I mean, he basically looks like Von Miller on the field. Another player, he rushes the passer very well. He was playing the run well too. He looked like a good player, and it's hard as a person, when you see a comparison to a guy that's so good, to not just hype up his talent a ton, when it just looks like there's someone so easy to compare him to that is already so talented. So I don't want to say that because I think I'm overhyping him a little, but he does look like at least a decent player. Charlie Heck is a tackle. He's a mid-round tackle. I'm not the one who should be judging offensive lineman talent, especially not like high-pick offensive line talent like mid-round guys. I do not know. We'll see how he does. That's what I can say. Next up is John Reed. He's a corner from Penn State. I was not very impressed by him at all, to be honest. Seems like he got lucky a few times where the ball just fell into his hands, and he got a few tackles for losses on like screen passes and that type of thing, but nothing that I was like, gotta write this guy home as a guaranteed talent. I really, honestly, don't like to say it because he's not even in the league yet, and I can't say that he's bad, but I can tell you what, I would not have picked him at all, especially at this spot. I think he was a 4th rounder. Lastly, Isaiah Coulter. I haven't watched much of him, or sorry. This was before I had even watched him. The only thing I knew about him was that he was from Rhode Island. And I just was like, yes, I like this guy already. He's from Rhode Island. Just the most main football school you've ever heard of, Rhode Island. He's a tall, skinny wideout, and not skinny. I should never use skinny as a way to describe a football player because he's not skinny. He's not huge for a football player. He's small for a football player. He's tall and thin for a football player. He's got a variety of skills. I wouldn't bet on him to break out, but I definitely like him as a pick way more than John Reed. And he's a pretty well-rounded guy. He's about 6'2". He seems to be really kind of middle of the road on all his skills. He's pretty quick. He's got pretty good hands, pretty good jumping ability, pretty good everything. Just have to see what he turns into. But he has some potential. Next, finally, let's talk about who they've got to play this season. Obviously, the first key, always where I start, divisional opponents. Colts twice, Titans twice, Jags twice. Okay, Jags, I'll give them both those. 2-0. Titans and Colts. I think the Colts are going to be better, but I haven't gotten to look into them enough to know how much better. I think here I'm going to go, they'll split each of those series. So take their 2-0 record and now 4-2. I'll give the benefit of the doubt to the Colts, but I could see them going 5-1 in the division, losing 1 to the Titans probably. Next we got their home games. So we're at 4-2 right now. They've got the Packers, Vikings, Ravens, Bengals, and Patriots at home. That is not very easy. This is not a forgiving schedule, to be completely honest with you. Bengals, I'd say they probably can beat them. Okay, let's make it 5-2. 5-2, then we got to still talk about these other 4 opponents. Packers, Vikings, Ravens, Patriots. Wow, that is tough. And I almost want to say 1-3 here, but luckily they are the home team. So in those 4 games, I'd say they could split those 2-2. That'll take their 5-2 record to 7-4. Now we got away games. They go to Chicago and Detroit. So I think those 2 games for them will actually be fairly easy W's. Bears, they don't really have the quarterback situation entirely figured out, and I think that makes it difficult. Also, Lions are lacking at a lot of positions. They got Matt Stafford back, which helps their team tremendously, but it's still not an amazing team overall. I think like I said, they'll be better with Stafford, but I think they get those 2 wins. Now they've got to head to Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Kansas City. Kansas City, Super Bowl champions. That one's going to be almost impossible to win. I know they beat them last year, but that's an L. Pittsburgh, I think Pittsburgh was a hard out last season without Big Ben almost the entire time. And if Big Ben comes back and plays well, then I think you're looking at a good Pittsburgh Steelers team. I think that's also a loss. And lastly, I think you got the Cleveland Browns here, who everybody is forgetting about the insane hype that we had for them last season. Everybody was like, oh, this is going to be the greatest team ever, blah, 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 blah. Well, they still have that talent, and they have an actual coach now. So I think having an actual coach on that team will help them win a lot more games. And I'd say the Browns are going to beat the Texans. Mostly, I'm giving them those last 3 games as losses because I gave them the benefit of the doubt a lot before. So, with that, I'm saying my final Texans prediction for the record is 9-7. So, if you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching. 2020 president candidate.